I'm Aryaman Munish. I'm an artist and I'm a creative director. And my work typically revolves around 3D visuals and typography. I just love playing around with letters and branding and all of that stuff. So how I work professionally is that I'm a freelancer. And I get my clients and I get my work because First, I create artworks that I personally enjoy making, that fulfill my creative potential, and I post them on social media. I post fairly regularly, which helps me reach more and more people on a regular basis, through which I am able to connect with the right people at the right time, people who are looking to borrow from my creative vision and apply it onto their brand requirements. So this can be like a 3D marketing ad, or maybe just some CGI required for a commercial, or maybe typography for a packaging of a product. So basically whatever my client wants from me, I do. And I love doing it. And I've been fortunate enough in my 4 years of experience now to work with some pretty major marquee clients. Just to name a few, I worked recently with Apple. GQ magazine, they commissioned me for some of their the magazine's typography on the cover. And Louis Vuitton as well. And I do also work very frequently, as they said, in the music industry. So I work with hip-hop artists very frequently, Ice Spice, Nicki Minaj. Other ones would be T-Pain, Labyrinth. If you guys are familiar with the show Euphoria, you'd have heard a lot of his music. But yeah, a lot of these brands and clients are bound by NDAs, so I'm not going to speak further. But I love everything about my work, in the sense that I love the creative side of it, making things that I want to make, but of course I also love speaking to people who need work from me, making friends from people who are in another creative industry, but not the same as mine. It really helps me broaden my horizon and learn more about the creative world, because I want to experience creativity in all forms, and that's what I get to do, so I love it. The weird part about being around my age is, I think a lot of you would relate. So I'm 23. I think the average age here would be somewhere between 20, 22, I guess. So we're all very intimidated by this one question, but somehow we end up asking each other that question all the time. And that is, hey, what do you do for a living? And whenever I answer the question, I feel like there's a lot more follow-up questions that it brings up. Because let's be honest, my career is not the most conventional one. I don't work a typical 9 to 5, and it's perfectly reasonable for people to have questions about this. And I think every person who's in a freelance or a creative industry can vouch for the fact that we all have this kind of mental script in our head that we refer to while we're answering questions. Because some of the questions are very common in nature, and it's almost a little monotonous, but most of the time we're all happy to answer these questions because it's just showing that people are curious in what we do, and that is very valuable to us. However, sometimes I can sense this conversation, the topic of it shift from a curiosity about my work to kind of entering into the financial sphere of things, where they're trying to kind of ascertain what kind of a living can somebody make out of this. And that I do find bothersome, because, I mean, firstly, how likely are you to ask a lawyer or a doctor or any other traditionally employed professional that, right? But for me, the biggest thing is that I feel like the conversation shifts from talking about my artistry and curiosity about my artistry to trying to place value more on the financial outcome of it all, which is nobody woke up one day and was I want to make money, so I'll be an artist, right? And I think this kind of how we surpass the social norms when we're talking about this is partially because it's very hard for people to perceive artists outside of this stereotypical persona of the struggling artist. And you can't really do much about it, I guess, but this is a question that I can explain to you guys why I don't necessarily love the question sometimes, and I have a reasoning and a rationale behind it. However, there's this other question that we also end up asking each other at this young age is, what's next? And this is a question that, honestly, even if I tried to, I don't think I could do a good job of explaining to you why it freaks me out. Because when somebody asks me what my future plans are, the honest, unbridled truth is that I don't know. Because I'm in an unconventional field and there's no direct verticals, which means that I don't necessarily know I can't do one particular thing for a particular amount of time and expect growth to come my way. It's just kind of topsy-turvy that way, and risk is part of the game when it comes to being a freelance and a creative. Let alone like in the same year. 1 month can be very busy and I can get a lot of clients coming in, and another month can be really, really slow and just like make you feel like it's all over, like that's it, I'm not going to get clients anymore. I try to focus when it comes to like staying consistent and staying on that growth trajectory. Instead of focusing on tangible outcomes, I like to focus on my own value system and what I feel like helps me progress and develop as an artist and an individual. So for me, what I thought mattered most about me was my prudence and my ambition, because I thought this prudence and ambition was a deadly combination that kept me going regardless of any successes that I experienced. Like I thought that it was kind of unnecessary to pat myself on the back for a certain like good thing that I did or achievement that I like conquered or anything like that, because I just felt like there's no time to stop, and why should I find myself complacent just because I'm doing well? Like I should achieve more, and that's where my ambition kicked in. So I thought these were my two best qualities, but this system did work for me, at least for like 3.5 years, up until the second half of last year, where it felt like my productivity, my creativity, all of it came to a sudden halt. But it wasn't all that sudden, if I'm being honest, and if I had the benefit of retrospect by my side, I would have been able to see that it had been happening slowly, and it was definitely those two qualities coming together that was definitely slowing me down. So in a sense, the prudence became fear. Like Major General said, fear stops you from making the choices that could make you win, right? So that started to kick in for me. The prudence became fear, and the ambition became, as the goals got bigger, I felt as though they were more unattainable. So with those things combined, I was just like super I was in a really dark space, if I'm being frank. And then I started to look back at it. And when I was like starting out in 2021, I used to create an artwork every day. And in 2022, as I got a little bit, better at what I was doing, I got a bit more technically capable. I needed a little bit more time to execute my more complex ideas, which is when I started to create an artwork every 2 days. This eventually became once a week, and then it went down to maybe once in 2 weeks. And at that point, it felt like I was making a post for social media and not art that I wanted to make, because it honestly felt like a chore, and I felt like if I kind of strayed from this little aesthetic that I've created for myself, I'm going to negatively hinder my career. So yeah, I was super nihilistic, I was super negative, and I'm sure you all are thinking that this guy who had like 1/10 of a million of an audience looking at his content on a regular basis, and he was being able to sustain himself off of his own art, what is he complaining about? And I wish I could have seen it that way, because honestly, that's the truth, right? But in my head, it was just like all hope is lost just because I was plateauing. And it took a lot of internal reflection to get to the root of the problem, because obviously it wasn't just that I wasn't being productive or creative. It was that somewhere I realized that I had attributed all of my achievements and wherever I was today to a series of fortunate events that I had no agency over. So I just felt as though whatever has come my way is just like a pure coincidence, and one thing could have gone different and I wouldn't be where I am today. If I had to explain it a bit better, when I was growing up, I never saw myself as an artist. School mein, I was never the kind of person who was like, very good at art class. My grades in art were also somehow terrible. And my friends used to put up paintings that they used to like put up on the teachers would be like, wow, this is amazing. And then it would be on display in the school. And I never even came close. I don't even remember submitting a finalized project for my art classes, let alone have something be put up in school. And then when it came to applying for college, I knew, I was in the most studious kid, so I knew that my board marks are not going to get me into a prestigious DU college, like this one, because I just knew that that's not what I'm made for. And so I just applied to art school because I was like, okay, I'm decent at this, I know a little bit of design, I might as well apply. And then when I eventually went to art school, I left. I took a gap year 2 years in when the pandemic hit because I felt like I'm not making the most of an arts education if I'm not even able to attend it physically. So, you know, all of these events did eventually, these series of events is what led me to come back to India for a year, start creating art on a daily basis, and then grow my Instagram platform through which I have the career that I do now. And it's easy to see it as just a series of fortunate events that just went my way, and unfortunate events in the sense that the pandemic brought me back home. You know what made me snap out of this perspective? This perspective that the luck was the only thing that was working in my favor and not my hard work. It was going through my Facebook chats. So when I was a teenager, Facebook was like the main social media. It was popping, like it was so much better than Instagram back then. You guys, like, it's not even, it wasn't even close. And I was scrolling through my messenger chats and I found like receipts of me as a 12-year-old. I was obsessed with Counter-Strike when I was 12, and Counter-Strike had these like little skins that you could buy, like weapon skins, and I didn't have the money for it, but I knew how to make logos on Photoshop, which is a cardinal sin. By the way, don't make logos on Photoshop, please make them on Illustrator. But regardless, I was making logos for people who needed a logo for the gaming team and stuff like that for like 50 to 100 rupees per piece. And I was saving that money up so I could buy like some new flashy skin that I wanted. And I was doing that like every day for like 2 or 3 years when I was like 12. And then when I was 14, I was apparently like doing an internship. Who does an internship at the age of 14? I was part of an internship where I was not getting paid. I was not working with a very reputed organization. It was just a bunch of friends that were like into esports trying to run a company. And I was putting day in, day out during my summers as a 14-year-old. And, you know, the puzzle started to kind of piece together slowly of how I got to where I was. The rabbit hole went further down when I looked at my Facebook posts from when I was 16, and I saw that I was tagging seniors from my high school who used to run this tech club that was very design oriented. I was tagging them every day, like, look, I made this design, can't I join your team? And I remember, and I finally saw the post that they finally like saw and commented, and they were like, you should join the tech club. And then I remembered how big that day felt for me as a 16-year-old. Having the invitation to that club meant so much to me, and I couldn't believe I forgot, you know? I couldn't believe that I forgot how much that day meant to me, and I couldn't believe I forgot that design was pretty much the only thing I was able to represent my school through. And I eventually went on to lead that tech group as well, and I was obviously also ecstatic on the day that they told me, hey, you're the president of that tech club now. And then the rabbit hole, would you believe it, went further deeper. And I saw notebooks, very incomplete notebooks. I was probably a hellish student for my teachers, but my class 3 notebooks, they were incomplete, but jo bhi tha, each page was filled with, you know how you could like draw like a letter and then draw another one behind it and then connect them for that 3D letter effect that all of us probably did when we were in school. My notebook was filled with those, and that's kind of what I do today. Like, I do 3D typography. And I found like this huge repository of like an archive of Geronimo Stilton books. If you guys are familiar with Geronimo Stilton, they were basically these it's like a story about a rat, and every few words would be like illustrated like a drawing. For example, cheese, because obviously cheese was there on a book about a rat. So every time they said cheese, it was like made out of cheese, like letter blocks that were made out of cheese. Like they had those yellow holes, that, like, you know, the typical how you see cheese in drawings. So they used to use illustration in mixed with typography to kind of create a feeling and facilitate the storytelling. And I know that's a lot of analysis for a book made for children, but that's kind of what it was, right? And eventually, like, it became very clear to me that all I have ever wanted to do growing up as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, was to be a designer. And there I was feeling like crap about what I was doing on a daily basis, about my career, when I was doing exactly what I have been wanting to do all my life. And that really put things into perspective for me. And since then, I have learned that it's important to be prudent, yes, but it's important to pat yourself on the back whenever you do something good or something worth praise, because you have to be your own cheerleader in this life. And I know there's probably a lot of people here who are uncertain for what their future holds. Honestly, as long as you're not a fortune teller, the future is going to be foggy. So you just have to buckle up for the ride, because it's never going to be more certain than the next day. But I think there's a lot of power in being able to be honest with yourself and understand what it is that you truly want, and know yourself in a way that you can envision yourself be where you want to be, truly want to be, not what society convinces you want, where you want to be, where you yourself wish to be. If you can envision that, you are already a step closer to getting there. And if you have the chance today, if you don't take anything back from my speech, just take a moment, regardless of wherever, however far away your bigger ambitions might be, just pat yourself on the back for being able to have done what and achieve what a past version of yourself had once wanted to, because we've all honestly done that, and you more than likely deserve a pat on the back for that. Thank you so much.